Thank you. Good evening, everybody. The lights are very bright. I can't see anything, but so glad to be in this space with you all. I'm Lena Khalaf Tuffaha, and I'm the Executive and Artistic Director of Mizna. Thank you for being with us tonight. We at Mizna are so happy to partner with the venerable Palestine Festival of Literature for tonight's program. We stand in solidarity with all indigenous people and movements across the world. As an Arab and Southwest Asian and North African organization based in the Twin Cities, we recognize that we operate on stolen Dakota land, Minnesota Makoche, and that the Dakota people are the rightful caretakers of this land. This recognition is one step we take toward dismantling local and global forms of settler colonialism from Turtle Island to Palestine. We comply with the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, and PACB, the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel. We're always in solidarity with the movement to liberate Palestine. In case you don't know Mizna, we are marking 25 years of presenting contemporary, critical, and experimental art, writing, and film centering the work of Arab and Southwest Asian and North African artists. We publish a literary journal also called Mizna, which we have for you to check out in the lobby. We publish also urgent writing on our online platform, Mizna Online. And lately we've been publishing many Gazan artists. And one of the things that we feel very proud of is that we always pay our artists, and it's especially important to share resources with those in Gaza right now. We also screen films regularly throughout the year, and at the annual Arab Film Festival, mark your calendars for our 2025 festival, September 24th to 28th. Today marks 429 days of genocide, and for these past 14 months, we've been struggling at Mizna to know how to do our work during this shattering time, while we witness the grotesque violence in Palestine, in Gaza, and elsewhere in the region that so many of us are tied to, in Sudan, in Lebanon, in Armenia. Our community is hurting. We are hurting. This unending horror we are witnessing has meant that it is no time for business as usual. We have in many ways shifted our focus to hold space for artists affected by the genocide, and to hold space for community to gather in grief and rage and solidarity, to continue to be together, to continue to keep resisting and organizing until Palestine is free. Evenings like this are a part of that work, gathering community around meaningful, moving cultural work that helps us imagine the world as it can be. And in this moment, we are also with our siblings in Syria, who are rejoicing the fall of the brutality of the Assad dictatorship. Surely there is much anxiety about the uncertainty ahead, but we must have room in our hearts to support Syrians in the hope for true liberation. Before I turn things over to the brilliant Sarah Yassin, whom I have truly been honored to work alongside in planning this momentous evening, I want to acknowledge that Friday, December 6th, marked 1 full year since the day that the poet and teacher Rifat al-Arir was killed by an airstrike by the Zionist entity. If he had lived, he would have celebrated his 45th birthday recently. I'm older than he was by a few years, but we are of the same generation. We are the children of those who were children during the Nakba in 1948. But my family was exiled and unable to return. and Rafat was displaced to Gaza. This hand of fate that is dealt to us by colonization is hard to grapple with. As we head into this literary evening, let us be guided by some of Rafat al-Harir's words. If I allowed a story to stop, I would be betraying my legacy, my mother, my grandmother, and my homeland. Thank you. Please welcome Sarah Yassin.
Okay, really is bright. Thank you so much, Lena. It's been really wonderful to work with you and to collaborate. It's an honor to be in Minneapolis, and it's an honor to work with Mizna, which is one of my favorite organizations. I'm Sarah Yassin, and I'm a Palestinian-American journalist. I've been curating events for the Palestine Festival of Literature here in the United States. It's an honor for us to be here in Minneapolis for the very first time, and I would like to thank Mizna and the Parkway Theater for being wonderful partners through this process. You can clap. Thank you. So I want to start off by telling you a little bit about PalFest. Historically, it's been a traveling literary festival, and what it did was it took well-known writers, artists, and culture workers across cities in Palestine. It was founded in 2008 by Ahdaf Suwaif, who's a legendary Egyptian novelist, and she created the festival as a form of cultural solidarity with Palestine. The trip, for many people, is transformative. In about a week, participants learn a great deal about the history, politics, and daily life in Palestine, and engage with the public and local artists through events and workshops. Since the start of the genocide, we have found it to be urgent to engage with the public through events like this one. Please make sure you follow PalFest to hear other events we organize in the US. And it's, again, an honor to be here and to be able to share PalFest with so many people across the country. So thank you so much. I would like to introduce the first person who's reading tonight, who is a wonderful poet named Dina Omar. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then you don't have to look at me for a little bit. Okay, so Dina Omar is a lecturer at UC Berkeley who teaches Palestinian poetry. She is a doctoral candidate at Yale University in anthropology and gender and women's study. While studying for her master's degree at Columbia University, Dina was part of the ad hoc organizing committee that founded National Students for Justice in Palestine. You can clap for that. Between 2012 and 2014, she served on the National Executive Board of the Palestine Youth Movement and was part of establishing the Ghassan Kanafani Writing Scholarship for young Palestinian writers. Dina was a student and teacher poet for June Jordan's Poetry for the People program from 2006 to 2009. Please join me in welcoming Dina.
I haven't done this in a long time. Ya'atikum al-afia. Thank you to Mizna, and to the Palestinian Literature Festival for the invitation. Thank you to the organizers. I am really honored to be in such good company, and I'm always very impressed by how elegantly you all do what you do. I'm gonna read a poem, and then maybe I'll talk a little bit. I'm gonna read a poem called Free Flight. It is titled Free Flight after a June Jordan poem also titled Free Flight. And the subtitle is What It Is Like Being a Palestinian Woman at UC Berkeley While Gaza is Burning. And it's dedicated to my best friend, Janine Wihbe, who was born in Yarmouk refugee camp, and also she was born in Nahr al-Bared refugee camp in Lebanon, and then lived in Yarmouk. And she was visiting me at UC Berkeley during the 2008 and 2009, I would say like 2.0 premonition of what we're seeing right now, like the full Gaza, of what's happening in Gaza right now. Yeah, so just to give you a sense of, her, father's father had gone through those things, and that's sort of what influenced her trajectory. And yeah, here it goes. Free flight. Nothing fills me up at night. Janine and I spend hours rolling grape leaves to distract ourselves from internet updates. The death toll is rising, the detected use of dime bombs. I inhale a whole box of red strawberry licorice from Trader Joe's. I drink a whole pot of metamilla. I lick the chocolate off the bottom of my ice cream. Janine and I stay up till 4 a.m., our eyes completely ajar, staring at each other in the turquoise night, silent in my El Cerrito bedroom. The last time this happened, in 2006, I chalked with red pastel crayon the name of Salim all over my bedroom wall, S-A-L-E-M. He was 22 years old and beneath the rubble. Red dust on the pillow, red dust on the blanket, red dust on the white sheets, red dust smears between my hands and my face and on the floor, and chalk is not blood, but it might as well be his blood on my hands. And I cannot help but wonder what is worse, being killed or watching killing on a full stomach. I should have spared loving men who think it is better to end their lives than to continue playing this game, where the cards are always stacked up against them. And after protesting in San Francisco and LA, the 6th one so far, my kidney infection turns into this weird stomach hurting, and I cannot feel below my belly. Ibtisam, Yaman, Kifah, Hussam, Wasim, Amin, Tom, Emiliano, Shaib, Dalia, Ali, everybody in SJP, Berkeley, we lift little milk cartons and make believe they are tiny dead bodies so that college students on our campus will feel something, so anyone will feel anything on their way to class, going to poli-sci or OChem or comparative literatures of South Asian diasporas. Maybe somebody will notice in the midst of writing a paper, maybe due tomorrow. Anyone will take a moment to not roll their head, to not turn their head, roll their eyes and say, they're so radical. Why are they always protesting? We want you to notice because white phosphorus starts small, like a scratch, a little burn, and water is like a small flame to pus-filled scars, and within hours it eats away at flesh, and white phosphorus is stuck in the eyes of that little boy. I saw his picture, but I cannot remember his name. And what does white phosphorus look like in the eyes? Like a glazed-over lizard, skin splintered, a rotting peel, speckles on a thigh, Tahrir's thigh, a young woman. I have a thigh too. Take it, burn it, slowly. Take the ash and use it as charcoal sketches to put Handala's back against every bare wall in this goddamn college town. And water only makes it worse. And what an awful way to die. And there we are wasting time stacking milk cartons on my college campus, pleading with Zionist jerks from Tikva, Israel, who deny my existence and blame this massacre on the Palestinians, as if we love killing ourselves like a football match. And every time a body drops, we score a goal. And the good guys wear green and the evil ones wear light blue, or vice versa, depending on who you ask. And Palestinians are evil, the boy from Tikva says, and I do not care, and I hold the line. I do not move. And I have been generous with my empathy. I have listened to stories of Holocaust survivors and held their stories as dearly as my own. I have spent hours on end listening to conversations about Jewish identity and conflicting ideas about survival and genocide and longevity, and that is why you should get it. Make the connection. This is not survival. Israel is rotting from the inside, and you've got to draw a line in the sand and say, get over your intellectual suits about, Get over your intellectual pursuit about rationalizing the burning pus in the streets. Because Tahrir's skin is burning, slowly, slowly. It started like a little blister on her thigh, and now she is dead because water only makes it worse. And now Gaza doesn't have no water anyway, and that boy, I cannot remember his name, has white phosphorus in his eyes. And although I appreciate your intellectual pursuits about identity, get over your fucking self. And maybe next time some Zionist thug wants to push me around, I will hustle him into a hammerlock and tickle his armpits until he admits that he is just some rich asshole who has money and leisure time to threaten broke brown girls like myself. And I will give him a noogie. And I will say, oh, hell no. I do not care that you are rich or that you are white and that you got all these big, scary lawyers and acronyms behind you like the ADL and AIPAC and the IDF. And I am not impressed, and you are not cute, and you will not keep me quiet, and I am not afraid of you. And fuck you for taking up so much time and space in my poem. Because Tahrir is burning slowly, slowly, and the boy, I cannot remember his name, has white phosphorus in his eyes, and Janine and I have not slept between protests happening so fast and intensifying by the day, but it doesn't seem to matter because bombs are still falling and the graves are still in flame and death tolls are increasing by the day, and 430. Sorry, just a little aside. This was written in 2009, and the death toll of children who were killed was 430. And today it's 17,000. And maybe I want to dissolve like the Palestinian Authority and accept money that the PLO throws at young activists and educated people like myself, and undermine people doing real shit on the ground like taking bodies out of the rubble. And maybe I should burn flags and occupy a building because Panda Express is gonna run out the small businesses owned by Arabs on campus, and tuition fees are going up, and Hussam's cousin was just arrested and his trial is nowhere in sight, and life seems so lifeless anyway. I mean, I got nothing to lose. You have taken everything from us without one photo of the boys in Gaza without their classmates sitting next to them. So arrest me, tase me, hang me from a hook, beat me. Maybe I need to burn a flag. Yeah, I'll burn the American flag. And I'll burn the Israeli flag too. And hell, maybe if it were not for the occupation and the genocide of my people, I would burn the Palestinian flag too. I would not be so patriotic if my people were not slowly, slowly up in flames. I would not have this inclination to wear a kufiya and yell at people who bought knockoffs at Urban Outfitters and say, hey, you are appropriating my national identity and don't know what that means. Because we are burning slowly, slowly, and I will totally burn a flag. Because what is national identity anyway except to exclude people from bordered space and auction off any semblance we have of human dignity. And nothing fills me up at night. And maybe I need an olive branch, you know, a white dove, long hair, and a peace sign, and a drum circle. The kind of body that gets beat up and trampled on by the police. And that the closer I get to the Gandhis of the world, the better I look to white liberals. And somebody make it stop and make me laugh and spit bullets at my enemies and say, fuck it all. Maybe I need an AK, a Molotov cocktail, and a videotape goodbye letter to my family who is already busy dying. The kind of body that socks and pushes back at people who grope me the wrong way. The kind of body that the closer I get to death, the better I look to the good old boys in the Knesset. And somebody make it stop and make me laugh and spit bullets at my enemies and say, fuck it all. Maybe when I wake up in the middle of the night and bolt the door behind me shut and pour all my shampoo and soap out the bottles and smear it beneath my feet, I shut the window, strip down naked, stream the water on high and loud in the sink and in the bathtub, writing poems on the mirror with eyeliner and in the shower curtain with broken lipstick. I sink my head under the water, running loud, spilling over onto the bathroom floor so that the cries of the dead don't scream so loud in my head, so that the cries of the dead don't scream so loud in my head. Let the water stick in my throat. Water only makes it burn. I have one more thing to say. A little nod to Sahad Amari. Today is my birthday. And the anniversary of the first Intifada. So in that spirit, I will say, I am with you. Ceasefire now, permanent, lasting, arms embargo now, free Palestine, free all the Syrian prisoners. Yeah, thank you.
I was like, I feel like it's not right. Honestly, love that. Thank you so much, Dina. That was really, really, really powerful. I want to introduce our next performer, who is a local, Danez Smith. Yeah. Danez is the author of 3 collections, including Homie and Don't Call Us Dead. They have won the Forward Prize for Best Collection, the Minnesota Book Award in Poetry, the Lambda Literary Award for Gay Poetry, the Kate Tufts Discovery Award, and have been a finalist for the NAACP Image Award in Poetry, the National Book Critics Circle Award, and the National Book Award. Danez's poetry and prose has been featured in Vanity Fair, the New York Times, the New Yorker. Okay. Okay. All right, Danez, come on up.
No, I was just saying we don't like the New York crimes anymore. That's an old bio. Peace, everyone here tonight. Peace, Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, and all over the diaspora. Thank you all for joining us in this moment tonight. Thank you all for organizing it. Thank you for gathering us in this way. Thank you for everybody who came from close and away to speak tonight, to join us. I'm thinking a lot about time right now from everything we just heard. I'm thinking about 429 days, was it? I'm thinking about writing something in 2009 that feels like it was written today. I'm thinking about June Jordan, who wrote things in the 70s and 80s who feel like they were written today. I'm thinking about 75, 76, however long since the Nakba, 70-something years. I'm thinking about all the things. I've been thinking about time a lot lately. I'm writing a book about it, and how pleasing time can be, but also how dissatisfying time can be, and about how long we pass our waiting for freedom onto the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation. In all that disappointment and anger with time, I still know that we will win. I still know that victory is the destiny for our peoples. I know that although evil right now has the money, evil does not have the final say-so on the human. And I believe in our hearts, I believe in forgiveness. I believe in justice and good violence and all those things. May the warriors of our liberations be protected. May the victory come swift. Cool. All right. Maybe I'll do that last. Okay, let me do what I was gonna do in the other order. Okay, I'm gonna read some new poems first. All right. Like I said, I'm writing about time. This one, there's a lot of letters like to time itself. Like if time was a dude, I'd be like, hey. So this is one of those. It's called Dear Time. Dear time, how many knees wasted at the wrong pulpit? Thought I worshiped the future, but it was pleasure all along. Thought my prayer aimed for peace, but it was simply ease. Prayed stillness and received stagnation. I did not mean to land in the middle of the road. I was wishing for destination. At times, I feared complexity. At other times, craved it. Sometimes it was wings and sometimes stones at my back. I wanted wings. I wanted to fly to the end. I was sick of walking, sick of praying. I wanted to be where the prayer pointed. Sometimes I said my oppressor's words, the ones robbing our time, stealing us out of time. I wanted heads. I wanted to return to them their chaos. I wanted reciprocity. I wanted to take their time. I wanted to take time out of them. I didn't want peace. I wanted victory. I didn't need rest. I needed victory. Victory was the prayer I couldn't speak out loud without saying what victory required. I started stuttering when I prayed. I wanted peace to be anything but still. I wanted peace to move quickly, destroy everything in its way. Okay, where are we going now? All right. I think I'm gonna do this one. I wrote this shit today. In the back of an Uber in Baltimore. Thank you to the very quiet uncle who drove me in Baltimore. And thank you to the very talkative uncle who drove me to my house once I made it back here. Who I got in the car and he was just like, a white woman called me the N-word last week, and that was the start of the conversation, and it was wonderful. It made me feel like I do the right thing. Yeah, cool. Fuck that lady. Shout out to uncles. Cool. This poem is called Differences. It's about words and language and stuff. Okay, cool. Differences. Knowing the nuance didn't change the shit, only morphed what would be shock into something less bladed, something dull like disappointment, which requires expectation and also understanding. Unlike shock, which implies surprise and belief. I believe belief and understanding are most divorced when it comes to hope, which belief requires and understanding is skeptical of as you get closer to it. You can understand hope, but never have it. You have to believe in hope, fragile as a soap sud. Or belief is hope, banished of doubt. The child who trusts the bubble will last forever. The real grief she has when it pops, she doesn't understand. Understanding neuters innocence, turns wonder into hope. Hope requires understanding as well, but requires as well you move past it or ignore it or prepare for it. I understand the terms. What else? Hope Two requires a future. Hope looks forward and prays for intervention or stillness. So hope requires movement, and movement is one way to understand time. Understanding requires the past. Understanding something you fashioned from the hide of the past, the meat either gone or gone bad. Where'd belief go? Belief needs it all. A past to stand on, a future made of glass, a now that doesn't cease you. Glass. I see it now, what the poem wants to know. I understand it enough. I believe we will win. And if the future shatters on our way there, pick up a shard and get to swinging. All right, cool. All right. A small one, and then we go yell together, and then we're going to do something else. Okay, cool. This one is called Last Black American Poem. I've been arguing about this poem a lot lately because some people think I'm trying to say, like, don't love black people. No, I'm saying that representational politics will not save us. And I'm saying that if we, as Americans who claim to be liberal and progressive, believe in the futures we say we do, then we must fall out of love with the structures that we currently exist in and realize that the powers that be, no matter whose face is there, are never going to save us, right? This poem is about, cool. Oh, I got a little time. We got time, y'all. All right. This poem is about Barack Obama. Cool. What else do you need to know? Oh, where I went to college, there's a very tall hill called Bascom Hill, and at the top is a statue of Abe Lincoln. Cool. That's it. All right, cool. Last Black American Poem. Voted for the Negro twice. Twice my captor wore my face. Admit it, Danez, you loved your master in your shade. Yes, I loved knowing the color at the end of my chain matched mine. Wrong river. It wasn't chains, it was water when one of us helmed the boat. Water for our eyes, water raised to the lips of cargo, still cargo. In summer, we turned down that Jeezy, learning a new one slain name. The helm, and still, the boat still headed to Carolina shores. My president was black when mothers got millions in exchange for sons. Michelle's perm was perfect as bombs dropped in the middle of childhoods. We buried my grandpa with an Obama button pinned to his lapel. Finally free, we sent him to heaven, American. When he won, we sprinted Bascom Hill and danced like happy slaves at Lincoln's feet. We were happy-ass slaves, happy to vote, happy to be able to protest the killing we couldn't end, happy for health care that killed us slower, happy the gays could marry in the country where trans women vanished like snow in warm winters, happy our wars were only of the mind. Only elsewhere. Forgive me. I wrote odes to presidents. Cool. All right. Cool. All right, this last one I need your help. So when I point at you, you're gonna say Free Palestine, okay? Let's try that. All right. You sound good. All right. And say that shit like you mean it, right? I'm Christian, unfortunately, and we really believe in, calling things into existence, right? So us all in this room shouting this is no small act. It is incantory, right? We are calling that future forward when we do that. All right. This poem, once again, is thinking about June Jordan. It starts with a quote from her. From the poem Moving Toward Home. I was born a black woman, and now I am become a Palestinian against the relentless laughter of evil. There is less and less living room, and where are my loved ones? He calls them the children of darkness, and being one myself, having been plucked from between stars, having been born again and again in the dark, dark bellies of those ships, delivered as cargo into the suffocating maw of America, I find my kin. Human animals, he called them, and having been ape, been dog, been mongrel, cattled and cold, I knew who was my brother. This late in empire, late meaning near its end, not near its completion. Let my language be clear and dangerous as water. Let my mind's tongue move sound, be exact where venom is intended and where light sought animals. He called them animals. Said the birds, said the fish, said the mice, said the mountain lions louder, said the cattle, said the wolves, said the horses, said the bats louder, said the elephants, said the deer, said the squirrels, said the bears louder, said the wildebeest, said the geckos, said the snakes, said the dogs and cats louder, said the bees, said the spiders, said the ants, said the rhinos, the birds again. Nature, I hear your prayer. I see your terror. I know my teeth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danez. That was wonderful. So we are going to have two panel discussions tonight. We're going to have our first one now. I would like to introduce our moderator, Nick Estes. He's an enrolled member of the Lower Brule Sioux tribe. He is an assistant professor in American Indian Studies at the University of Minnesota. He is the author of the award-winning book, Our History is the Future, Standing Rock versus the Dakota Access Pipeline, and the Long Tradition of Indigenous Resistance, 2019, which explores the Dakota Access Pipeline protests through the lens of Indigenous history and resistance. Estes also co-edited Standing with Standing Rock, Voices from the #NoDAPL Movement, 2019, with Jaskier and Dylan, a collection of essays from more than 30 contributors that reflects on the movement's significance and its place within the broader context of Indigenous struggles for sovereignty. His work highlights the longstanding tradition of Indigenous activism and its contemporary relevance in environmental and political movements. Please join me in welcoming Nick, who will introduce his panelists as well.
Hamatakiapi, Napi Chuzapi, Chante Washte. I just want to thank PalFest and the organizers of tonight's event. I'll just, like the price is right, I'm going to call people up. The first is we have Sagirah Shahid, is a Pushcart Prize-nominated Black Muslim poet from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Her poetry and prose are published in Mizna, Winter Tangerine, Prose Online, Juked, About Place Journal, and elsewhere. In 2020, her poetry was selected by Muslim advocates and Shangri-La Museum of Islamic Art, Culture, and Design for inclusion in the American Muslim Futures virtual exhibit. Sagirah is a poetry editor for Overtly Lit. Next we have Aziza, who is a Palestinian-American writer with roots in Deir al-Balah, Gaza. She asks you to do your part in the struggle to liberate Palestine and all people. Her award-winning journalism, poetry, essays, and creative nonfiction have appeared in The New Yorker, The Baffler, Harper's, Mizna, Washington Post, The Intercept, and The Nation, among others. She has received residencies and fellowships from Fulbright, the Tin House Writers Workshop, the Asian American Writers Workshop, Cafe Royal Society, and the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting and Mille Arts. Her first book, The Hollow Half, is a work of experimental memoir, exploring the intertwined legacies of diaspora, colonialism, and the American dream. It will be published in April 2025. And last but not least is Dina Omar, who's already been introduced. And so briefly, the idea behind this panel was talking about solidarity in the future of this particular moment. And so the first question, this might seem like a basic question, but you know, I'm a historian. I'm not a poet. I'm not a lit person, really. I'm kind of the odd person out over here. So I asked some really hard-hitting questions, I guess. So, however you want to answer them, please feel free. But what does solidarity mean to you? And we'll just start with Dina on that end and just go this way.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I'm really excited to be up here with all three of you. What does solidarity mean to me? I think it's a complicated question, mostly because solidarity, I think, means being in good relationship with people and in deep relationship with people and valuing the other person's life as your family, as your kin, as your own. And in doing so, I think one of the main things involved in that little thing is being able to be different and have differences of opinions and even, fight but not leave each other and stay committed to one another. So that's how I would sort of describe solidarity. Yeah, that's what it means to me.
Not to be derivative, but I agree with everything you said. I was thinking about relationality. That's the first word that comes to my mind as well. And to the point of familiality is something I've been thinking about lately, which you pointed to already, in that siblings in best cases know each other so intimately and to the point of conflict sometimes, but ideally to the point of then maturing past that conflict, learning from one another. And personally, as someone who loves their siblings deeply, I would show up and fight for them, no questions asked. Their pain is my pain. I absolutely am so different from each one of them, but would just honestly put my life on the line for them. And I guess the other thing that I would say is it's an embodied practice. As virtual as our world is, I think the deepest solidarity requires some form of embodiment and being physically together to the extent that's possible.
I also agree with everything that you all were saying. But to add, I would say part of how I'm thinking about solidarity lately is it's nuanced, right? And it's contextual, related to what you can risk and what you can lose. I'm borrowing from what a local academic said about the academy and activism. Dr. Finkelstein, Mara, said that we have to think about the things that we're willing to risk. So I think solidarity in part is along those lines of the sibling relationship. What are you willing to lose for someone else, and what can you and interrogate regarding your privilege. And I think solidarity is like that willingness to be able to risk something for your beloved, right? And understanding your context in that regard as well. But I think it is contextual, it's individual, it's deeply relational as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate those answers, especially coming from a profession where solidarity isn't built into what we do. We're always often taught as writers and as academics to compete against each other. And we often don't unite around causes. And I think Palestine especially has brought in, especially with the BDS movement and the commitments by Palestinians, writers against the war in Gaza, but also, there's a kind of larger political moment where I want each of you to maybe reflect on, because I remember back in, before 2020, when Trump lost the election, there was a massive moment in which Democrats and liberals really incorporated or co-opted Black Lives Matter and the struggle for racial justice into their campaign, and then completely gutted, any promise that they had made, fell back on it. And in this moment in time, in a time of terrible danger and genocide, they've completely literally locked the doors on Palestinians, and not have granted the same kind of stage or platform even within their own party, and in fact their policy is no different in a lot of ways to their rival party. And I was wondering if either of you could reflect on this particular moment in time about the limits of solidarity, especially when it comes to, as Danez, really pointed out in his beautiful language, or in their beautiful language, what does it mean to love one's colonizer? We're taught to love one's oppressor, to cry on the shoulder of the people who are literally murdering our families, or cry on the shoulder of the man who stole our land. They have solidarity with each other. So what are the limits of our solidarity with them?
When the way you contextualize it is a little different than in the yes. It's limited. I was like, when I first read the question, I was like, it's boundless, it's limitless, solidarity forever. But when you put it in that context, yes, like the hill I am going to die on is if anybody regurgitates, I don't care what color your skin is, or if you don't have the sort of like critical thinking skills to not regurgitate the sort of lies, deliberate, malicious misinformation about, things like beheaded babies and systemic rape, just echoing at the highest echelons of power, then I just viscerally cannot relate to you, because we're not seeing the same thing. To me, what I see is the wholesale dehumanization of maybe in particular men of color, for the purpose of allowing brute colonial violence to be perpetuated, to allow people, or to legitimize it. And yeah, I think that it's, there has to be a line in a red line where you say you're not allowed to, we're not sharing the same historical, deep, rigorous sense of commitment.
Yeah, of course, that's very well put. I think that something I would add is, in this current moment, the limitations that we've seen in solidarity. You pointed to the moment of 2020 until today. I think a lot of the cleavages and the conflict that we saw between different communities of color, specifically that Palestine brought to the fore in this election, to me, it was painful to watch on many levels. It was painful to be a person whose family is being killed in Gaza every day, and be told that I'm the problem. But I think that as absurd as it sounds if you put it that way, or if you really like have your eyes open, to me, it just so clearly expressed the extremity that everyone in the United States is in one way or another, that this is a country, aside from the ruling few that you mentioned do have solidarity with one another. Some people are, very organized. I just see the way that people are in so much pain and fear drives us into a state of like primal sort of like survival and concern for just one's own or just one's self, and maybe a willingness or a susceptibility to believe that we don't have interests in common when we absolutely do. And I think it's like the worst kept secret, but we need to continue to work hard to make those things visible and plain, how no one is safe. Like all the platitudes are so true. Like no one's free until we're all free, Palestine cannot be free in the world as it exists now. To free Palestine is truly to break the systems that are oppressing probably every single one of us in this room. Being in this room means we're probably, not the people that power serves on a daily basis. So yeah, the limits of solidarity are, I think, drawn by our fear and our lack of love and understanding and ability to see one another. And there are like moments where that needs to be called out. I absolutely agree. And I do think that if we're in relational solidarity, if we're actually living our lives day in and day out with one another, like we won't fall prey to those myths and that propaganda. It just won't be an option. So there are moments when solidarity feels so easy and simple because there are those human moments where, yes, we're coming from very different places, but we're recognizing the abandonment and the violence that is the United States of America, because we're watching our friend be failed by the healthcare system, or we're watching our friend not be able to pay for groceries because this country, in indirect ways is funding a genocide. The lines are just everywhere for us to connect, but fear is such a block to seeing those things.
Just to add briefly, I think a lot about how like solidarity can be like what you were saying earlier about it being weaponized. I think about how it's a continuum that we can't forget, that it means we have to continue this work. Thinking about the solidarity historically between Black civil rights members and like the NAACP and Jewish community members, and how that solidarity was really important, but it doesn't at the same time in this contemporary sense absolve us from like interrogating growing our knowledge and growing our relationships to each other. I think part of it is also to thinking about how underneath the pain of our respective communities, like we always have to have that self-awareness and that reflection collectively, and that doesn't stop. I'm gonna stop talking though because I'm rambling, but part of solidarity is listening and knowing when to listen and create space. So I'm really intentional about trying to make sure that I'm not taking up too much space.
Actually, on that note, can I just add one little thing? That I don't want to flatten in what I said earlier. I don't think I did a good enough job at acknowledging that we are not oppressed in equal ways or in equal measures, and that there needs to be a reckoning. Each member of the community, the privileges they carry, the different abilities, the different resources. So I definitely do want to acknowledge that as well. There needs to be, like you said, self-reflection and painful inner work as well, and intra-communal work.
Yeah, I think those are really excellent reflections, and something that you all have kind of mentioned in your answers is about relationality, and thinking specifically about this place, coming here. I was born and raised in South Dakota, and I thought South Dakota was racist until I came here. They literally rebuilt the concentration camp to get my ancestors in at Fort Snelling. I was walking by it, I had no idea it was like rebuilt, and sure enough, and they were like turning butter, they were doing frontier reenactment, and it's so ingrained within the culture of Minnesota. Like it's the air they breathe. But what I thought was fascinating is that even the name Minnesota Mokoche, it means land where the water reflects the sky. And that is about relationality. It has all the three elements: land, water, sky. You breathe the air You live on the land, you drink the water, right? That's our relationship as Dakota people, Lakota people to this land. And Dakota and Lakota actually mean just ally and friend. It's like literally, that's who we are. We're just good friends, I guess. But it also gets to this question that I think the Palestine Solidarity Movement has really brought to the forefront, especially organizations like SJP, Student Justice for Palestine. But also, I've read it a lot and heard it a lot in poems and in literature, is a question of settler colonialism. In a nation state that has been founded on enslavement, genocide, and the ongoing legacies of white supremacy. So how do we position ourselves alongside other freedom struggles within the context of, settler colonialism? What Israel is doing is not new by any means. People were online, some of my historians friends were saying, this is 19th century barbarity. It's like, this is the 21st century. Where do you live? Do you speak Dakota? Like, we're all speaking English for a reason, But I wanted, because each of you are positioned in different ways and in different locations, and maybe we could start with you, start with the local and maybe go down this way, but thinking about what does it mean to position Palestine alongside other freedom struggles. It's one thing to say, and I really take that to heart, that we're, unless we're all free, no one's free, right? But what does that actually mean in the work we do, how we move through the world, how we interpret and feel this particular moment?
Yeah, I think part of my thinking around this is just acknowledging first that it isn't new, our positionality. So a lot of folks quoted June Jordan and some of the work and thinking about that. Malcolm X, for example, wrote, this letter condemning Zionism way back when. And so thinking about how we have always been positioned in solidarity with each other, and we've always had this archive of history and movements to consider. And so it isn't new, and I think part of what I'm thinking about too is just, I'm going back to learning and listening. I have to be honest with you all, I almost didn't show up today because I've just been going through a lot, but I'm thinking about and we're all going through a lot, but thinking about that it was really important for me to show up for my community, for my beloveds, to be here with you all, because I have sat with your words, because I have, Mosab, I think about how your poems and your work, and thinking about how in Minneapolis, for example, during the Rawi Fest, we were all sitting with you afar, trying to advocate and trying to make sure that we didn't forget about you and everyone. And so I think part of it is just being present and feeling in our bodies and our spirits, and knowing that we are in direct connection and direct relationship to these histories and each other. And I think that positionality is always changing. I love that we are a place that is in dialogue with the river, and that in the name itself, that we are in dialogue with the river and the sky. And when you think about continuums, and we think about how water is always changing, it's always in relationship to the sky. And so with evaporation and all that stuff, and rain and snow. And so I think that's kind of like us. We're always having to adapt. We're always having to change. We always have to do work. We might have to sacrifice some things, but that positionality is always different. And just being willing to be open to that, to sit with that, to receive that, to learn, even if it's imperfect. I feel very imperfect in this moment, but I'm happy to be with you all.
Wow. I mean, I think you just said so much, and you also just embodied it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for, even in the few days of interactions that we've had, you've been such a beautiful balm, and I truly feel supported by you, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you. And that sort of reminds me of one thing that I could say to answer Nick's question, which is legacy, which you pointed to. I learned about solidarity and activism not because I'm Palestinian, although I should. I'm the daughter of a refugee. I was afraid of movements before Trayvon Martin was killed. That's the first time I ever stepped into the streets, and it was the movement for Black Lives in that iteration and further iterations that taught me so much about courage. And then it was indigenous movements, Native movements that showed me about world building and relationality with the land, and gave me another language and another set of concepts to begin to understand myself as like a Palestinian whose people are not free yet, working for liberation, and what that means, which is building an entire new world. So to answer Nick's question, which was really good, and I'm trying to come back to it now, what does it actually mean, right? Well, one thing I feel like it's always so important to say is, like, we won't free Palestine, like Palestinians are freeing Palestine on the land, and we need to affirm that everywhere we turn, that the struggle, there is a battlefront, and it's there, and we're the second wave, I guess, of that struggle in relation to Palestine. But we also know that freeing Palestine means bringing down empire, settler colonialism. Now I'm remembering what you brought up. Settler colonialism is active, and it's present, and it's ongoing, and it's here, as you mentioned. So it's not through electoral politics, and it's not through representational politics, as Danez brought up, but it's through fighting and also building at the same time. Because of the fear I mentioned earlier, I think that people's needs need to be met, and people's fears need to be, accommodated and recognized and reckoned with and addressed in order for there to be the courage to continue to step out of the known, whether it's the two-party system or the idea that the U.S. military is somehow keeping us safe, or any of those things, or that having a captor that looks like us is going to save us. Like, we need to counter. I think it's beautiful that this is a literary event, because we need to build new stories. There's an entirely new world, which also I think is a world that would harken back to the old and to the earth. We need so much more imagination. So I think that as the Palestinians are freeing Palestine, our job here is to bring this place to its knees, and we do that through fighting, and we do that through building. So.
I don't have much to add to the really beautiful ways that you both articulated, the how question, except to say, Sagirah, I really empathize and am lockstep with you. I don't know why I decided last minute to read a poem from 2009. I felt like I needed June to push me on stage, because I've been very suspicious of the podium, of the sort of public-facing thing. I feel it in my body, that uncomfortability, that hesitation, the trepidation, the fear. But it's not necessarily fear of the oppressor, it's fear of the structure. And I would say, or the form, right? And my approach instead has recently been and this is why I think maybe campuses or SJPs are lucky, because they're physically in the same vicinity with one another. But like you said, you show up to, and it's hard because sometimes it feels like the spaces are closing in on us, but in spaces together, however uncomfortable it is, in ceremony, in prayer, in the streets, the point is I don't know if things are going to get better anytime soon, but we're going to need each other, and we have to lean on community, and we have to figure out how to relate and protect each other. And that's all I'll add.
Thank you. I want to just put on my historian cap for just a second, because the word, or the term, settler colonialism is currently under attack. I had some of my own colleagues even say, settler colonialism risks being anti-Semitic. Yeah. I have a black book of academics quotes, things that they say to me. That was the really funniest one. It's like, okay, Jim. That term actually has a really interesting genealogy, by the way. It was a term and a concept that was first theorized by Palestinians in the 1950s. It came to the anti-apartheid struggle And it also came to the indigenous struggle in Turtle Island, at least as far as I can trace it, in the 1970s and the 1980s. We learned it from our Palestinian comrades when we started doing international work. So it was really them who helped reveal not just the system that we're experiencing on our own lands, but the global system of settler colonialism and empire. But also there was a shared vision of decolonization and struggle. And this is my final question for the three of you. And it almost seems like an inappropriate question in this time when there is so much death and destruction and suffering to think about a future, because oftentimes people think about colonization as something that takes the land, inhabits the body. But really, colonization is the theft of the future. And what futures does Palestinian solidarity, what futures has it manifested? What futures will it potentially manifest? Not only for Palestine, but for also us, where we stand or where we currently reside.
I'm the only one that hasn't started, so it feels fair, even though that's the hardest question. Wow. Interestingly, I was at dinner with a couple of the folks from this event last night, and I was telling them how I've been thinking about the question of futurity for a couple of years. It's very difficult, but I realized that I needed to run at it because it was holding me back. I had this felt sense in my body of this theft of my future, or the future of my family, at least those on the land, but truly all of us. And I realized that I didn't have a living concept of the future or sense of the future in my body, and I've been wrestling with that for several years. So I completely agree with you. I think that I've been thinking recently about how Gaza we're all attached, right? Geographically, every part of the world eventually is contingent. But I also think that, temporally, Gaza is sort of like an extension. Gaza is a glimpse of, in some ways, the futurity of the place we are here, in that we're sitting by and watching the most concentrated example of the most distilled illustration of how empire considers us, our lives, period, all of us, human life under the gaze of empire eventually ends at Gaza. I mean, that's the end point of the way that the systems under which we currently live will lead us. So I think that wherever we are, we need to consider our future in relation to where Gaza is today. And I think it's obviously a warning sign of where we could go, but as I mentioned earlier, Palestine can't be free in the world as it is, so we're fighting for all of our own futures as we fight for Palestine. And I think it also, I know I'm just putting ideas next to each other. This is less than coherent, but I think that the reasons that Palestine is so hard to free are really important to think about. It's not that Palestinians are selectively, in some ways we are very selectively hated, but in other ways there's just so many vested interests that also have an extra potent, the interests of empire are extra potent in relation to Palestine, whether it's natural resources, whether it's the inability to tolerate armed resistance or self-determination of people, whether it is white supremacy or, just like what happened in Grenada, in the island of Grenada, when they had a revolution and the United States flooded the island because every example of successful resistance had to be quashed. If Palestine freed itself, what would that mean? It would turn everything upside down. So I guess all I'm saying is that Palestinians are teaching us to believe in the future and to imagine that we can get somewhere else and that it's going to be a fight to achieve and to defend any future. And I'm sorry that that was very convoluted, but as I said, it's the hardest question I think so far. Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to say it was not incoherent, that the world is incoherent, and you're making total sense to me. When I'm thinking about Palestinian futures, I'm thinking about, a lot of the values that I grew up with that I feel resonate across a lot of different, identities, subject positions, things like thrift, things like lack of materialism, stewardship, community. And I think as a kind of analytic, the question of Palestine, like there's so much material to draw from that it's so clear. And I think like on a regular basis, we're just, maybe not most, I don't know. I can't really tell after this election, like what the fuck is going on. But it feels a lot like you're just surrounded by like these echo chambers of like gimmicks and things that are trying to sell you things that you don't really need, and like, beauty products and soap that's like poisoning the earth and the ecosystems. And I just feel like if you pause and look at Palestine, the Palestinians, you'll realize that what's happening today is not exceptional, that it's part of a continuum of what's happened as patterns of genocide, as patterns of settler colonialism, as patterns of slavery, as patterns of, and just that, just to give you a sense of where I'm going with this, I grew up in a huge family, and like you were not special, right? So there's this sense of like, instead of wallowing in one's own victimhood and grief, what I hear from Gaza is so noble, which is to say, all of this is happening to me, and I am absorbing it, and I still refuse to be a subjugated victim. I'm standing in my dignity, and I'm inviting you to stand in yours.
I don't have anything else to add to that. I think I wonder, like just a question, like what it looks like when we have a future that is without empire, like any empire. Like I loved what you said in your poem earlier about burning all the flags and what that looks like for us in the future.
Let's give a really warm round of applause to our panelists.
We're gonna stand. So Sara and I are gonna read some poems, but before I just wanted to introduce them. We're gonna read two poems tonight, two excerpts of poetry. The first is from exiled Gazan poet Yahya Ashur, who earlier this spring Mizna published Yahya's poetry ebook. And we're gonna read from Yahya's work and encourage you all to purchase a copy of Yahya's book. You can go to Mizna's website to do that. The proceeds for the book go directly to Yahya, to support Yahya's family. The second poem that we're gonna recite tonight is entitled I Grant You Refuge, which is a poem written by a Palestinian poet, novelist, and teacher, Mosab Abu Toha. The poem was written on October 10th, 2023, and it was one of the final poems that she wrote before she was murdered by the occupation forces airstrike on October 20th, 2023. She was only 32 years old. And so we're going to recite a translation of that poem. It was translated by Huda Fahardeen's. And then also I just wanted to contextualize it a bit more because we are in Minneapolis and there's a special thing about this poem for the city of Minneapolis that I wanted to share. And then we'll read the poems together. So as many of you know that we just had a celebration for our poet laureate, Hyde E. Erdrich. Yeah. And earlier this year actually, when Hyde did her opening ceremony, she said something that really resonated with me at the Loft Literary Center. She said, and I quote, "A poem might get through a moment where it is difficult to say what needs to happen. So I think there's power in poetry that cuts through a lot of conversations, and Hyde has been in solidarity with our work continuously." And so that poem in particular really resonated with us, and I sense that those lines to one of our city council members, which earlier this year we were doing a resolution for one of the city resolutions for ceasefire, and also that included divestment statements. And we shared Hiba's poem to that council member, and they recited Hiba's poem in that vote. That is historic, so it's a part of our public archive. And so I just wanted to contextualize that our city is always trying to do better, and just to remind us to continue to be in solidarity with each other.
Thank you for doing that.
And then we'll start with Yahya's poem and then Hiba's.
Thank you for introducing us, Sagirah, and for that context. And I guess now is my little chance to say thank you to Mizna and to Palestine Festival of Literature and to all of you for being here. It's a huge honor to share a stage with every single one of these folks, and more importantly, to just get to meet you off stage. And yeah, we're far, far, far too deep into this genocide, or as my friend Fargo Tabechi said recently, it is too late and there's not enough time. So we're going to start by reading an excerpt of Yahya Ashur's recent collection. As Sagirah mentioned, on the Mizna website, you can purchase an electronic copy and send it to every single one of your friends. And yeah, the dedication is as follows. To my family, this is me trying to save you with my words, hoping one day my words too will reunite us again. But Gaza, nothing will turn back dismembered body parts to whole bodies again. No peace could ever make up for a single funeral of the many that never had the chance to honor a single whole body. Perhaps the fallen no longer ascend to heaven, or they are not all afforded this luxury anymore, for how could body parts fly?
Neither a god nor a king from the west, or even the east, could wipe death off your forehead. Neither a god nor a king could offer enough condolences. Rejoice, Gaza, we are no longer murdered, while the world is sleeping. The world is wide awake. Most of them kept dancing and singing. Some of them follow however much they bear of our news, and only a few protest in their free time. As for the Arab world, they're waiting on pens and needles for 1,001 nights to pass, so you, Gaza, could finally save yourself by narrating thousands of victims.
Gaza, what can I say about the genocide? Not a single word glides me over this flood. Has anyone alerted the poets of the world that the most eloquent are those that are wounded and displaced? Their poetry enchains channels on air and disconnects networks online. O nation dyed with white paint, How can you not see our red blood on your hands? Haven't our ashes hit your face yet?
It's too late to tell you. Don't follow the footsteps of America. The blind don't blindfold your eyes for America's sake. No Gazan should be considered fortunate until dead. No Gazan should have to have any other destiny. That is what the world silence says. Swallow your sufferings very well. Don't vomit them even in your nightmares. You can only hope that this would keep the Zionist away from your heaven.
Oh God, if the time of miracles has passed, why hasn't the time of massacres? Oh God, we couldn't tell how many souls we've lost in each massacre. Now we can no longer bear to count the massacres. In Gaza, people are blessed with darkness while they wait for missiles to rain down on them and have their wounds healed once and for all, rendering them ashes, rubble, and body parts.
The Zionists baptize my Gaza with blood and ashes and let it die like a phoenix, but never to be born again. Who would baptize the phoenix if it were reborn?
This is I Grant You Refuge by Habu Adinada, translated by Huda Fakhreddin. I grant you refuge in invocation and prayer. I bless the neighborhood and the minaret to guard them from the rocket, from the moment it is a general's command until it becomes a raid. I grant you and the little ones refuge. The little ones who change the rocket's course before it lands with their smiles.
I grant you refuge. I grant you and little ones refuge, the little ones now asleep, like chicks in a nest. They don't walk in their sleep towards dreams. They know death lurks outside the house. Their mother's tears are now doves, following them, trailing behind every coffin.
I grant the Father refuge. The little one's father, who holds the house upright when it tilts after the bombs. He implores the moment of death, have mercy. Spare me a little while for their sake. I've learned to love my life. Grant them a death as beautiful as they are.
I grant you refuge from hurt and death, refuge in the glory of our siege, here in the belly of the well. Our streets exalt God in every bomb. They pray for the mosque in the houses, and every time the bombing begins in the north, our supplications rise in the south.
I grant you refuge from hurt and suffering. From words of sacred scripture, I shield the oranges from the sting of phosphorus and the shade of cloud from the smog. I grant you refuge in knowing that the dust will clear, and they who fell in love and died together one day will laugh.
Just making sure you guys are paying attention by moving. Thank you guys so much. That was really, really powerful. And I'm just, again, honored that you guys are all here with us tonight and that our performers are here tonight. So please give them another round of applause. So I'm going to lead another discussion, and then we'll have 2 more performances. So obviously, you know, we could have had every single person on stage for the last discussion and for the discussion we're about to have, which is about the, you know, the role of poets and culture workers during the time of genocide. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to speak and share their contributions. But obviously, I feel like I could hear all of you guys talk all night about the subject matter, so thank you for your contributions. I think that I'm going to introduce our panelists in a second, but I think I just want to tell you a little bit about what we're going to discuss. So I think that, you know, in this moment, a lot of people in this room, a lot of people, you know, who do engage with the arts are thinking about, you know, what the role is of artists and people who produce this kind of work in this kind of a time, especially when we're seeing so many institutions fail to meet this moment. So that's going to be the topic of our next discussion. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. Okay. And please come up when I call your name. So I'd like to call up Lena Khalaf Tuffaha. Yeah. Lena is a poet, essayist, and translator. She is the author of 3 books of poetry, Something About Living, winner of the 2024 National Book Award, and winner of the 2022 Akron Prize for Poetry, Khan and Her Sisters, finalist for the 2024 Firecracker Award, and honorable mention for the 2024 Arab American Book Award, Water and Salt, winner of the 2018 Washington State Book Award, and honorable mention for 2018 Arab American Award. She is also the author of 2 chapbooks, Arab in Newsland, winner of the 2016 Two Sylvias Prize, and Letters from the Interior, finalist for the 2020 Jean Pedrick Chapbook Prize. Really glad you're here, Lena. Next, I'd like to bring up Mosab Abu Toha. Mosab is a Palestinian poet, short story writer, and essayist from Gaza. His first collection of poetry, Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear, was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award for Poetry and won the Palestine Book Award, the American Book Award, and the Walcott Poetry Prize. Abu Toha is also the founder of the Edward Said Library in Gaza, which he hopes to rebuild. And he recently won an Overseas Press Club Award for his Letters from Gaza columns for The New Yorker. Please join me in welcoming Mosab. And then finally, last but not least, Danez, can you come on up here? Okay, so I think before we start, Mosab, I just wanted to give you a moment to perhaps share with this group, you know, maybe what do they need to know about what's happening in Gaza right now, and what are things like in this very moment?
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Just to correct, my name is Mosab Abu Toha. So Abu Toha is a different family. God bless every one member of them. And also Abu Toha, many of whom are still in Gaza, except for me and my wife and my kids. So when Sarah and Sagirah started to read the poem in English, I just went to Hiba's website, Facebook page, and I found the poem, and I just had this idea of reading the poem in Arabic, just very quickly, if you don't mind. Yeah. Because that is the language that poem was written in. It was in the Arabic language. And I went back to the posts, and I found the poem It was published on October 10th, 2023. واحد أعيذك في الفروض والاستخارة وأرقى من كل مأذنة وحارة من الصاروخ لحظة كان أمرا من الجنرال حتى صار غارة أعيذك والصغار قبيل يهوي تغير بابتسامتها مساره 2 أعيذك والصغار هنا نيام كما نام الفراخ بحضن عش ولا يمشون للأحلام ليلا لأن الموت نحو البيت يمشي ودمع الأمهات غدا يماما ليتبعهم به في كل نعش 3 أعيذ أبا الصغار وبعد قصف يشد البرج حتى لا يميل يقول للحظة الموت ارحميني فماذا لو تأخرت قليلا يقول لأجلهم أحببت عمري هبيهم موتا جميلا 4 أعيذك أن تصابي أو تموتي بعز حصارنا وببطن حوت شوارعنا تسبح كل قصف وتدعو للمساجد والبيوت فحين القصف يبدأ من شمال ستبدأ من جنوب بالقنوت 5 أعيذك أن تصابي أو تعاني فقد حوطت بالسبع المثاني من الفسفور طعم البرتقال وألوان السحاب من الدخان أعيذك إن من عشق ومات سينقشع الغبار ويضحكان. And then she finished it by saying اسم الله عليك يا غزة من مجيء الليل. I ask Allah, God, for the night to be safe for you, Gaza. So that was a prayer. Allah yarhamha. God bless her soul. She has been posting a lot on Facebook. I'm going back, and unfortunately, she has written so many things. One of the things about the family leaves, the trees of the families, they have been losing a lot of leaves. And she is gone, and I lost, personally, about 31 members of my family, at least 2 first cousins with their husband and their children. So now, that was last October, and now we are in December, about 14 months after Hiba wrote her poem. So to answer your question, Israel has been genociding Gaza for 15 months. They have been genociding the West Bank and the whole of Palestine for 76 years. And the situation in North Gaza, where I used to live since 2000, it's unbearable to watch, not to see, even to live. But today I posted a video of the Israeli soldier setting fire to a school. And then the soldier who was filming the fire, and then he tilted the phone. And then I saw in that video, houses, there is no house, it was a rubble. It was a heap of rubble, houses that were a heap of rubble. And today I posted a video of Rafah. So not only are they expelling people from their houses, they are destroying the houses. So even if there is a ceasefire, people, when they return, if they could return, if there are people, they will return to nothing. There are no schools. There are no universities. There are no hospitals. Just 3 months ago, after Israel started its brutal military campaign in Beit Lahia and Beit Hanun and Jabalia, Israel expelled all doctors and nurses and even the cleaners. That's something that my mother-in-law, who was still in Beit Lahia before they left a few weeks ago, she told me they expelled even the cleaners. And to the extent that if you go to the hospital, you are just lying on the floor, and your relatives will watch you die. And even if you die, you die. Even if you survive, you are going to die. So there is no even way for you to survive if you made it after the bombing. On October 26th this year, I was on the train going back from Syracuse with my wife and kids. And midway, we got some breaking news. I was sitting sometimes, so you will excuse me. Sometimes I open my phone, I check my Telegram channel. I'm following a lot of Telegram groups. So this is a photo of a father who is hugging his dead son. Anyway, so we were checking the news, and then we got the news that they bombed my wife's uncle's house. And then we tried to call our families in Beit Lahia still. And we saw that, oh, they bombed Saadi Abu Shidq's house, which is my wife's uncle. And then Saadi was killed, along with his wife, Jihan, along with the 3 daughters. One daughter was killed with her husband and their 5 children. There was only one survivor, Suhaib. I told you that when Israel invaded Beit Lahia the last time, they expelled all the doctors, all the nurses, all the cleaners. So we tried to evacuate Suhaib. We tried. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, he managed to be moved on an ambulance to another hospital. But midway, the ambulance was stopped by the Israeli forces. There was a checkpoint between Beit Lahia and Gaza City. Even though he was escorted by the World Health Organization, they opened the soldiers opened the door to the ambulance, and they said to him, "Welcome, Suhaib. We will treat you later." And until now, we don't have any information about Suhaib. So people, even the injured, even if you made it alive, even if you are taken to another hospital because there are not enough doctors or medical equipment, you are going to be abducted, just like they abducted my brother-in-law, about whom we don't have any information. He was abducted on November 6th this year. We don't have any information about him. You talk to the Red Cross in Gaza, they tell you we don't know anything. You call the World Health Organization about Suhaib, I asked them, they said we don't have any information. So, and this is Israel. This is what Israel is doing. So this is the situation. I mean, one last thing. Today, I posted that there was breaking news in Beit Hanun. Some people decided to stay even though it was dangerous. Today they bombed some houses in Izbit Beit Hanun. And there are no ambulances that can go there. There are no hospitals, of course. There are even no vehicles even to evacuate the injured. So 20 people were killed, and no one is able even to go there. So this is the situation in North Gaza, and of course southern Gaza, killing every day in Nusayrat, in Deir al-Balah, in al-Maghazi, in Azawad. Every day there is breaking news. So if I'm going to unmute the conversations on my Telegram, everyone will be dancing on the music of the notifications.
Thank you so much. I think that, sort of in the face of that, I think the question that I have for everyone here is, what is the role of a poet and of writers and of literature in a moment when there is just so much death and calamity and tragedy? What do you guys see as your responsibility and your role in this moment?
I think I thought a lot about this. I wrote a book about it. For myself, just to speak in the American context, right? When, I've been writing these political poems my whole life, right? When it was the War on Terror, right? As a baby poet, I think, I figured out and was instructed on how to be able to write about that from this distance. When Trayvon Martin was killed in Florida, I knew how to write about it, or I could get to it. It felt important. When Mike Brown was murdered, I could write about it. I was far enough from it. It felt important to write about it. It felt like justice to write about it, like aiding it. When George Floyd was killed, I didn't know how to write. I didn't have the language. I no longer had the security of distance to grieve from and to move from. And I think sometimes writing, when we do feel far from where our grief and our anger is sourced, writing feels like such a necessary action at that moment, right? Because writing it writes it down in history. It becomes the refusal to deny that this happened when you write it down, right? But I couldn't do it when it was here, when it was outside my window, when I could smell it. I couldn't move, and didn't want to move. I didn't want to consider the question of writing. There were things to do. The only thing I wrote during that time was at the encouragement of a lover. I think the New Yorker had hit me up. It was like, will you write about what's going on in Minneapolis right now? My first reaction was, fuck you. And then they said, you must do it, or else somebody else is going to mess it up, right? And so even if even if it feels like language isn't what you want to deal with right now. Part of the work that we need to be doing right now is to write it as it's happening, so that we can be sane in the future and realize that what we went through was real, and so that those who we're going to meet in the future and who will arrive beyond us know what happened while we were here. And I think, I wrote my most recent book is a lot about this question: what the fuck is the good of being? Sorry, there are children here. What is the role of being an artist? What's the good of being an artist when there are such urgent things that need our attention in the world? And I think the answer I've come to is that art alone is insufficient, but it is fuel. It is energy. It does get us to go forward. And, from a scientific understanding, we know that there is no movement without energy, and that same thing is true for the movements of people in this world, right? We have no movement without energy. And poems and songs and art, all types of art, is that energy, right? So I'm hesitant always to say that, like, I wrote a poem and I did enough, or I wrote a crown of sonnets about the very bad thing happening right now, and I'm gonna send it to the West Indiana Review, and it'll be published in 2 years. Like, nah, that's not really the thing. But so that is not the answer to what we need to do in the world. But art is a necessary thing for our souls and for the souls of those we're in the struggle with. And so in that way, while sometimes it feels useless to write, we indeed must write. Not stop at the writing, but we must write, so that way our co-conspirators, our comrades, have the fuel that they need to keep going, and go further into the demands of our hope. So that's the role of the artist, right? We are here to feed the soul of the movement, and that is no small task to take up.
Thank you for that, Danez. I think a couple of things are worth adding. For me, having been brought up not in the United States, I understand that this conception of art as a separate thing, as a separate pursuit, that this idea that there's art and then there's political art is a Western notion. You have been lied to. Give it up. So it's time to join the rest of humanity. And, it might be interesting to think about art, capital A art, being what is actually deeply engaged, and what, as June Jordan taught us, is telling the truth. So maybe that should be the barometer. So I think about that a lot. The other thought that I wanted to add is, this is an American genocide. It's an American genocide. The Israelis are conducting it. They are the ones doing the killing and the annihilating and the destroying and the erasing. But the United States and its Democratic administration, Biden and Harris, are the ones who fund continuously, who violate American law, international law, who go around Congress. Congress has done plenty too. It's not like they're good guys, but that wasn't bad enough apparently. So Biden had to outdo them. And they have continued and doubled down. And at the United Nations, it's the Americans whose raised hand,
Black hands usually. Talk about that.
over and over and over again, has stopped any chance of hope, any chance of survival with impunity. So what that means for us is that this is our genocide. And what that means is, I think, not about maybe what our role is in a lofty way and can I write or can't I write. No, there's no option not to write. That's not a thing. We're not witnesses, we're complicit. All of us, because these are our tax dollars. And so then every one of us has to get up in the morning and figure out, with the resources that we have and with the conscience that we have, how do we move today? Day by day, with whatever you have from wherever you are.
Should I say anything? Yeah. Okay. Well, there is everyone who studies poetry knows the definition that Samuel Tyler Coleridge once said, that poetry is the best words in the best order. And I think we have to redefine poetry and add one more element to the definition, which is in the right time.
Yes.
It is not only, poetry is not only the best word and the best words in the best order, but I mean, what is the point of using the best words in the best order if they are not used in the right time? This is the right time to use your art, to use your poetry. And I'm wondering how many poets there are in this country who haven't written a single poem about what's happening to our people, to fellow poets at least. I mean poets like Hiba Abu Nada, who wrote that poem on October 10th last year, and we are reading her poem as if it's happening today, and it is happening today. And this is the first thing. I mean, this is why we write poetry. We write poetry because it is our only tool that I can use for me as an artist. It is the only thing I can do. I can't go to Gaza and pull down the F-16s. I can't dig through the rubble and get the bodies of the people. I have 3 friends whose bodies have been under the rubble since last November. I can't get the Oxford Dictionary or Cambridge Dictionary with me to dig through the rubble and get their bodies and bury them just like other human beings. So it is my only way that I can contribute to the resistance that my people are trying to put together. The other reason why we write is that English is a language, and it is the language of genocide for me.
Talk about that.
1917, the Balfour Declaration, it is the start of the genocide. And before that, of course, the Zionist Convention. But I mean, for me, the start of the genocide is 1917, when Arthur Balfour promised Palestine, the homeland of my people, to the Jewish people. And I say here to the Zionist people, not to the Jewish people. Because not all Jewish people are living in Palestine. And they are not convinced of this entity. And no one should be. And it is also the language of the current genocide. Every time we hear Kamala Harris saying, or Biden, or anyone, like Rifat al-Arair said, they are responsible for the genocide every time they say Israel has the right to defend itself. Every time they say this, I lose a friend. I lose a family member. I lose a colleague. A friend of mine is abducted. I have so many friends who were abducted. I myself was abducted. And maybe a few minutes after Kamala Harris or Biden said Israel had the right to defend itself. Because every time they hear it, okay, let's go abduct Mosab. Then Biden said it again or posted it again, or maybe a European official said Israel has the right to defend. Then, let's kill a doctor, Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, who was abducted from inside the hospital in last November, and he was announced dead early this year. So how do I respond to this? Israel has the right to defend itself. I have to expose what this means. So unfortunately, we are using the same words that were used by other artists decades ago. But the problem is not with the language. It is with the people who can make this continue to happen. Our genocide. The genocide that is happening on the hands of people who claim to be victims. And for me, anyone who claims to be a victim, once they commit a crime, when they victimize others, they are no longer victims. This is the point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Something came into my mind listening to what you both said. And I think, Danez, you mentioned the feeling of being frozen and the language not being able to serve, and then you built on that, Mosab, in a different way. that's maybe an invitation to poets. We're all, I think, we are exhausted and feeling like the language is breaking and the language isn't holding what we have to say. And so if this is our craft, then shouldn't we be engaged in remaking it? In like, that's an effort. That's something that we can actually contribute.
Amen.
And doing that hard work of trying to refashion the language to serve justice instead of to be a tool of genocide.
No. I mean, I could, but.
Well, so kind of in the same vein, just, thinking about the constraints of language and using English, and also, just when we talk about publishing or speaking, I cannot help but think about where you publish, right? And we have this kind of, to your point, Danez, earlier about like, writing so that there's like a record of what has happened. Something that I think a lot of people have been struggling with is the fact that, a lot of the institutions or, the platforms that are seen as the sort of like ledger of the truth are, being sort of questioned as far as their credibility or how complicit they are. Obviously, as a journalist, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but much more interested in you guys' thoughts. So I guess, how do you sort of navigate the fact that there is this sort of contradiction in what is the sort of like platform of record, but also kind of like wanting to break it at the same time?
I think when you're engaged with the platform of record or the industry or the genre of record, you flood it, right? You have to make I think we have certain responsibilities as artists, right? While I love art for art's sake, oh my God, I love writing poems about squirrels and stuff like that, there must also be the real need for art to nourish and embolden the urgencies of our time, right? And so when you're writing books, you should be writing about the world. When you're sending poems to journals, they write about the world. But those things take months and years to make happen, right? Something so brilliant about the poem that was read twice tonight, right? Two beautiful readers in two different languages, right? Where did that poem start? Not a journal, Facebook, right? There is an immediacy, right? We have so many tools at our hands, right? I can publish a poem on Facebook. I can take a screenshot and put it on Twitter and put it on Instagram, right? I don't need to wait for anyone's approval to have that language enter the world and start transforming things, right? And so I think there's an urgency to the art making that requires us to release ourselves from the strictures of production that capitalism has presented us and told us that these are the appropriate avenues to get your art out. Put that shit online for free. Who gives a fuck? Go to the rally, go to the open mic and read, if anybody is giving you time on stage as an artist, how have you helped the better world come a little bit quicker by the time you get off that stage, right? I'm so disappointed in the last year, right? I'll go to a reading and I'll see 5, 6 poets get on stage, hour and a half, and nobody said shit about Palestine. Sorry to the children once again. I apologize, you are innocent. Don't become like me, don't cuss. But it makes no sense, It makes no sense. I was at a reading the other day, and I'm like, I'm the last one, and I'm the first one to say it, and I'm like, how? As black poets, as poets of color, as women, as people who are complicit in this, as people who claim, right, and I feel like in most poetry, I'm in circles of people who go for the blue side of evil, right? And I don't get who we say we are, who we propose to be, and yet our action, let alone our language, does nothing to meet that urgency, right? At the same time, I feel so called into the moment when I do go to places and people are acting like they got some sense and writing like they got some sense and organizing like they got some sense and are trying to do something, even just that tiny thing to help engineer our liberations, right, that are all so intimately tied. And so I think not only, right, there's been brilliant essays about, like, who gives a crap about form, right now, right? Who gives a crap about craft right now, right? There are things to do. There are things to, we must move in ways that our enemies do not expect. You know, we must not, we must flood their channels, and we must make our own. We must start to move a different way. If we know that time and progress has moved so slowly and stubbornly and sometimes backwards against our demands and our desires, then we have to become, I mean, there's not a thing in our life, whether it be the art, whether it's the living or the liberation, that does not require creativity, right? And so we must become innovative, not only in what we make from an artistic sense, but how that art comes into the world and how it interacts with people, because the audience, the people who need your work, do not have time to wait for the processes that be, right? So yeah, let the urgency meet the process as well. I guess this is some of that, yeah.
So I think as a poet, I'm in the same place with my fellow Gazan poets who are writing nonstop and posting on Facebook. It is, by the way, and this is the same thing that the journalists in Gaza are doing. People in Gaza, journalists and writers, are doing the job of international war correspondents who have been blocked from going to Gaza. I, as a poet, have been doing the job of a journalist, because every poem that I wrote about, I mean, half of the poems in my new book were written after October 7th. And I found myself writing and reporting on things that were happening around me, to my people, to myself, to my children, to my students, to my neighbors, to even to the nature around me. I mean, I've been reporting about these things. So there is the struggle to report and document these things. This is what you know, journalists like Mu'taz and so many other people that you don't know maybe, and that you should know, of course. But I mean, there are so many other journalists who have been covering this nonstop. So there is the first struggle is to go to the scene of the massacre, or to the scene of the bombardment, to document it. And then there is the struggle to connect to the internet and upload these things. So there is another struggle. And this is the same thing with us as artists. We are struggling to find the story, not to find, if the story is there, of course, but I mean to put it into words, or to put it into a painting, I mean, or a song, I mean. And then there is the struggle to share this with people. So we tend to post whatever I write, I mean, after and before October 7th, whatever I used to write, I post it on my social media. Because, I mean, a poem does not wait. I can't submit the poem to the New Yorker or the Nation or the Atlantic and wait for 5 or 10 months or maybe a year, and then say, sorry, we will not publish. I mean, no, I publish it. I write it and then I post it, I swear to God. I write it and publish it. Because it is about a human life. And people in Gaza have been reporting about things that they have been seeing, about, you know, blood and corpses and people who have been dying while they were waiting for the food trucks. They have been posting about daily lives. And we as artists, and this is a question to every artist in this country, you should be reporting on your feelings. How do you feel when you see your fellow human beings bombed while they are trying to survive? I mean, people in Gaza are not living, by the way. Now I'm changing this phrasing of my language. I will never say that I lived in Gaza. I did not live in Gaza. I was surviving in Gaza, because the kind of life I was living is not life. I mean, when I say I live in Massachusetts, oh, yes, I go to school, I go back from school, there is electricity, there is water, I have friends that I can go to, my friends can visit me, there is an airport that I can travel to any country when I have a visa, there is a sea, there are birds. But the kind of life I had in Gaza is not living. So part of our jobs as artists are to rethink the words. Live in Gaza is not a verb. It is a dead verb. It doesn't exist even. And I realized this. after I left Gaza, because when I was in Gaza, I thought that, okay, this is the life. I didn't know about life here in this country. The first time I left Gaza was when I was 27 years old. We have no airport in Gaza since 2000. Do you call this life? We never had a seaport in Gaza. Do you call this life? I'm 32 years old. I've never seen an airliner in the sky over Gaza. I mean, how do I even tell people, oh, I live in Gaza? This is not live. So this is, I think, part of our, I mean, this is not, I can see people. Okay, wow, so many people. Hello. I mean, we as artists, as human beings, we have to redefine the words. Okay, this is not living. He's breathing in Gaza. Okay, I'm doing some mechanical things, you know? But this is not living. And one last thing about why I write poetry, why I think everyone is writing poetry, because they want to understand something that is mysterious to them. For example, in one of my poems, I wrote a poem about someone who was running with the body of a dead girl in the hospital. I mean, sometimes, when I watched the video, I was really shocked. I mean, I didn't understand, why would he be running with the dead body of a girl? Why is he running even? Is he going to save her? She is dead. I see that. But then I tried to understand that when I started writing the poem, because when he was running, other people were running after him. And I said, you are living, I was talking about the girl who was killed. You are living for a moment, when you are alive for a moment, when living people run after you. So I felt like these people who were running, these people are alive. So they were trying to give some life to this dead girl, even for a moment. So there are so many things that you can't understand in Gaza. Sometimes I turn to poetry to understand these things. And you, every one of you, should use their language, use their art, use their, I don't know, I mean, everyone is an artist of you, of course. But I mean, you should find your way of understanding things, and if you understand things, use your talent to make other people understand.
Thank you for that. I think I'll try to take the institutional angle of that question. I don't know if we've quite addressed it yet, but I've been buoyed by watching some folks, not many, but some folks wrestle with their institutions this year, fight the good fight. Each of us has to decide for ourselves which institutions, which publications, which journals are irredeemable. And some of them are. The hope is to keep that number really small. But, you know, each of us has to, I'm not one for blanket statements or dogmatic edicts, but I do think that each one of us has to really think about where they're willing to put their name, where they're willing to put their work, what we're willing to give up. And it's an analysis that we each do. You know, if I cede this space, what will happen? Is it better for me to show up here? Is it possible for me to show up here on my own terms? Just doing some press interviews this past week, and it's not surprising, I've worked on press-related issues for a long time, but it's impressive how committed they are to lying. Really, it's just, American journalism is something. I hope one day it is studied. Not you, but some folks around you maybe. Like, you know, you'll go out of your way. I'm at the point where I'm almost, an interview's almost like genocide, 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 genocide. And then the interview will appear, on October 7th, Hamas attacked, and then Lena said genocide, what she called genocide. You know, or right, exactly. What Mosab and Amnesty and like the UN Special Rapporteur, and we could go down the list. But also, I mean, maybe it's also important that like Palestinians told you it was genocide 15 months ago. I feel like that matters. So it's a case by case when you're talking to journalists about how to show up and whether you can actually speak on your own terms. and you'll fail sometimes, but wrestling with them and pushing back. And the same is true for publishing your poetry or putting your art out into the world. So, excuse me, beyond just those limited examples where institutions are taking horrific positions, like it's okay to divest from them, it's okay to call them out, it's okay to wrestle with their boards, it's okay to hold them accountable. In fact, it's really necessary to do all of those things. And so I am buoyed and hopeful when I see that work being done. Excuse me, I'm honored to participate in it when it's possible. And I just hope that we all make those judgments with clarity as we're putting our work out into the world, and feel confident that we should have a standard, and we should demand that Palestinian lives aren't made invisible or aren't second to Israeli lives somehow, or that's like such a low bar. My gosh, it's such a low bar, and still, in those rare moments when we have that tiny win, it's amazing. So I think that work of pushing institutions and calling them out and working from inside and from outside and everywhere cannot be dismissed, no matter how messy it is. It's required.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask you guys one final question, but this is a lightning round, so you guys have to answer really quickly. I have very much
tell poets to be brief. Oh my God!
You know,
our poems are short, our answers are long. That's what.
I want a poem.
Okay.
Each. No, but do it on the spot, okay? I truly could listen to this conversation all night. So thank you so much for your contributions here. Earlier when Sada was talking about, just sort of using literature as a form of resistance and using our imaginations to sort of build new worlds, that really stuck in my head from the last discussion. And so without it sounding too trite, I just wonder what gives each of you hope. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, Lena, but what gives you guys hope? Quickly.
Children, anger, the fact that somebody survived a worse world than this for me to be here, and love.
You didn't leave anything for us. I mean, I see hope in the younger generation in this country, the students of the encampments, the organizing that they are doing on campuses. Just yesterday, I was at the University of Pittsburgh, and some people tried to cancel me. But I had a full house yesterday. I see the stories, I see hope in our ability to come together, to find the stories to share with each other. I find our story in our struggle to liberate Palestine, because if we liberate, even our struggle to liberate Palestine, it means that we are searching for our humanity that we have lost.
Okay, co-signing all the ones that have been listed before. Definitely in the students, and to be fair, in the parents and grandparents that raised them. Bless them. Because, you come from somewhere. And I feel like someone smarter than me has said this, but I think of hope as a practice. Okay, Mosab. بعدين معك. Hope is a practice, and so I feel hopeful. When I'm stuck, it means I haven't moved and I haven't done anything. And so when I do anything that moves me a little bit forward, that moves us a little bit forward, I feel some hope.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please give them another round of applause. Thank you. So next up we have Lena Khalaf Tuffaha, who is wonderful, and I'm so happy to see her today.
I mean, come on, you guys. Does this come down any further? Can you hear me? Okay, we're just gonna make it work. Thank you all for being such a wonderful audience, and thank you to all of the readers, the artists, the organizers. Thank you to PalFest and to Mizna. It's so good to be in your company this evening. You know, we had an election here recently. Did you know that? I had some feelings about it. So this poem owes a debt to Frederick Douglass and Ghassan Kanafani. What to the Arab American is Election Day? A cabinet of curiosities, a conundrum, a closed circuit, a cost analysis, a distance between us, a cavalcade, a carnival atmosphere, a crash landing, a lowest common denominator. Another day, the president does not make the call to stop the bombs. A cage in which we pace, a chiaroscuro of the dream, empire's curtain call, a casting out, a kiss after death, the eve of calumny, our humble offering to the national altar. The last day, we are told, it might be easier to organize. A continuity, a carte blanche, a cloak and dagger affair, a loss called before the votes are counted, a cross to bear, a crossing, an intersection without working lights, a Tuesday in the 2nd November of the genocide, the 30th day of total siege on Jabalia, a conjugation of exile, the day after there was no arms embargo, the aftermath of speaking, the myth that keeps on taking, a spooky season, a haunted house, a hall of mirrors, a conflagration, a conversation between the sword and the neck. In 2019, I think, I've read this so many times I'm forgetting the date. 2019, there was a large mass protest, nonviolent protest. That word is problematic, but we're gonna go with it. In Gaza, of people, you know, because more than 80% of Gaza's population are refugees. So people just got really tired of waiting and decided, let's march home. Let's just go home. So they decided to march to the border fence, and that was called the Great March of Return. This, of course, was met with sniper fire by the Israeli occupation forces. And so Friday after Friday, people from Gaza would go on this march, and Friday after Friday, the Israeli military would shoot at them. Shoot at their kneecaps, shoot at their feet, shoot at their hearts. So this poem is in honor of the Great March of Return. Variations on a last chance. The fence does not hold. The wire sheds its barbs, softens to silk thread. The snipers run out of bullets. The desert, as it always has, of its own volition, blooms. The snipers are distracted, sexting their girlfriends. The snipers' eyes are blinded by smoke from our burning tires. The snipers wonder if they will ever see the end of us. The fence does not hold. The snipers take a lunch break. The bullets melt in their chambers. The bullets disintegrate when they reach the word press on Yasser's vest. The news finally breaks the stillness around us. The bullets will themselves away from the boy's skull. The boy's sandals sprout wings, and he hovers above the bullet's path. The snipers lose interest in shooting at medics evacuating the wounded. The snipers make eye contact with one of us and see. There are enough saline bags at the hospital. The snipers shoot and miss, and miss, and miss. We outrun the snipers. We bury the dead at the fence, let their roots reach the other side of home. This poem is for the parents and the grandparents. First generation. Our parents told us if we left, it was for fear of what might fall, the structures that house us, the sky itself, breached, defenseless. And if we remained, it was for fear of what would be taken, the orchards that raised us, the catalog of wildflowers we foraged after the last rains, the names inscribed on grandparents' headstones. So little is spoken of love and its fractured geography. Like all good refugees, our parents teach us remembering how it is forgetting's successful twin, how it graduates from the best university, makes a life for itself in tech and finance, in arts and letters, and when our fingers part to examine it, what we've gripped like the edge of a lifeboat, like a lantern, our hands are empty, a canvas the color of the stones of our villages. I haven't read this one in a while, but I was made to think about it tonight because of our conversation. So let's see. There's a shadow on my book. This is for Ahid Tamimi, and I think I'm probably also thinking of it because of all prisoners, all captives, thinking about the images of our Syrian brothers and sisters coming out of those horrific dungeons, and thinking of the Palestinians in Sdete Man and in all of the dungeons of the occupation. Freedom for every one of them, for every one of us. Iconic for Ahid Tamimi. Tonight, between translations, when we carried a poem from one country into another language where perhaps the imperative doesn't land with the same iron blow as the original, I recounted the story of a theater of people listening to a young poet become apocryphal and gathering his lines as fast as they could, and then I tried to say that the one word he used for writing and recording would require a sentence or a story or a pantheon to capture it, and I thought of the word I have come to hate most in English, which is peace, because it is always pointed at my skull, and I am supposed to want it more than my own name. Tonight, a blood moon pulsed above the prison cells, where nimble fingers threaded beads the color of a flag and steadied themselves for the moment after the door slams again, and they stay behind it, measuring shadows and memorizing the laws that are broken to keep them there. Tonight, a girl with a mane of wheat-colored hair slept in her own bed in the silence between invasions. Tonight, and the poem of a man who loved a woman across the barbs, delineating history, poem that became a song, poem placed squarely between a rifle and his beloved's eyes, the color of honey, poet who in an aging photograph seemed more a boy in outsized glasses and shoes, walking towards the lines he would write, the way any of us otherwise rational beings might walk into the waves, knowing we have never been able to swim, our waists lassoed by threads of moonlight, the bell of our questions surging inside the cave of the body, the table of what is possible shifting, spilling over. Tonight, and the ravages of its insatiable mouth and lightlessness, where poets and children will not give up the words that speak them,
are swallowed. It is possible, outside this cathedral of stars and glimmering planets, it is possible to imagine that fear inflicted on the body by sound grenades and strip searches, by shackles and threats of, oh, the rosiness of your skin. Do you burn easily in the sun? It is possible to imagine that these could break us too. Night and the day that follows are both promise and prison. I tried to say this about translating the poem, about breaching the waves, about painting a girl's face onto a wall to frighten a monster, about lingering at the empty chair where the departed poet's jacket is perfectly folded beneath the spotlight. I understand this desire that cannot have enough for want of light and access to the sea. I understand it carves icons out of our bones, ululates as the fallen are returned to their mothers, dances the same dance at weddings and funerals. I understand, but it might not translate. Thank you. I'm just remembering that that poem was selected by Ismail Khalidi and first published in Mizna. I had forgotten about that, so yay, Mizna. Okay, in honor of everyone else who has read, this is new work, and then I'll close with a poem from the book. This poem is forthcoming in a journal. For those who don't know, this was new to me, I learned the term grisaille is a term used in art to describe a kind of painting style in gray monochrome. And there's been a lot of gray this year. Grisaille. The method is simple and civilized. A canvas must be stripped, then prepared, the scale of shadows and highlights defined, a foundation of values laid out upon which the victor's colors will be saturated. Our children learn the maps of homeland in wartime, on screens emblazoned with their cousins' limbs, vermilion streaks across the gaping craters of their leveled neighborhoods. It is said this technique comes from Europe. It is said the soldiers are livid for being forced to kill. It is said, disperse them. Our children study these images, their cousins' corpses light fast, their cries passing through networks of metal and verdigris calling for water and father and air. It is said more succinctly, flatten it all. It is possible for the light to be reflected back to the viewer for the effect of luminosity. Okay, and I'll close with my personal poetry hero on the title poem of the book, sort of, you'll see why. But June Jordan was the first American poet who said Palestinian for me. I happened upon a book of hers at the bookstore as a college student. I was like, how am I a literature student and no one has ever taught me this poet? Not in a high school classroom, not in a college classroom. And it was amazing. And then I started to understand why pretty quickly, but it might have something to do with naming us. But her book living room felt like being found and being seen. And so I invite you all to read it and all of her work. This is Letter to June Jordan in September. I cannot pass the anniversary of that first news event of childhood without returning to your poem. How from my house I watched, and watched my grief-stricken parents unable to speak. How I leaned into the screen, the chords of the cries, searching for what was recognizable of fingers and thighs, of bracelets and mustaches. Macabre arrangement of bodies with names like our own. I cannot pass without your words. Something about witnessing twice removed, about distances magnified by the shift into language, of dailiness and my own children's vernacular and the machine, grinding us all in its jaws. I met a girl from the camp at a reading in Beirut. She asked if we could talk about the life of poetry. Our families are hauled off to the world of the dead, and every day it is on screen. In Gaza, we're watching Ferguson. And in Atlanta, we're watching Jerusalem, watching Minneapolis, watching. Their weapons and their training programs, indistinguishable. The word almost flickers for a nanosecond. Here, I note the shelf life of self-censorship, legacy of our era. Some days, poems are scrawled on pieces of cardboard and carried on our shoulders at the protest like martyrs. Here, I should say something about hope. Here, I should say something about living. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lena. That was incredible. So I would like to bring up our final act, who I have wronged in two ways. One, I would like to say his name correctly this time. Mosab Abu Toha. Damn diaspora. And then also I forgot to mention his new book, Forest of Noise. So thank you so much. So Mosab will be doing something really special for you guys. He will be joined by Tim O'Keefe, who is known to many of you here. He has been performing Arabic music for more than 40 years. He is part of an Arabic music ensemble called Amwaj, and he has done many live music collaborations locally and elsewhere. Tim is trained with Simon Shaheen for many years and is skilled in many classic Arabic instruments. He has performed Arabic music around the world, including at the Jarash Festival in Jordan and in Palestine, in Birzeit, East Jerusalem, and Bethlehem, and Lena's wedding. So please join me in welcoming them. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. This is my decoration for the table. Okay. Thank you. PalFest, Mizna, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Tim, for being with me, for giving me some strength. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite. My kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale. This is from Rifat al-Araiz, posthumously published book. Tomorrow is the official publication date of the book. And I and so many friends and I want to make this a bestseller. And I encourage every one of you to order the book and to make this book an international and national bestseller, to make it to the lists in the New York Times and to other magazines and newspapers that in many ways have contributed to the death of Rifat and so many of my friends and families. Okay, start. So I'm going to read 3 poems from this book. This is the only survivor with me from Gaza. I had 2 public libraries in Gaza, Edward Said Public Libraries, and I also had a library in my house, which was destroyed in October last year. So that was the only thing I took with me. The first poem is called Palestine, Easy, and it's a long poem, but I'm going to read just the first 3 parts. Palestine, AZ. A. An apple that fell from the table on a dark evening, when man-made lightning flashed through the kitchen, the streets, and the sky, rattling the cupboard and breaking the dishes. Am is the linking verb that follows I in the present tense when I am no longer present, when I am shattered. B. A book that doesn't mention my language or my country and has maps of every place except for my birthplace, as if I were an illegitimate child on Mother Earth. Borders are those invented lines drawn with ash on maps and sewn into the ground by bullets. C. Gaza is a city where tourists gather to take photos next to destroyed buildings or graveyards. A country that exists only in my mind. Its flag has no room to fly freely, but there is space on the coffins of my countrymen. And this book was published in 2022. Some of the poems were written in 2017, 2018, and some of the poems here are outdated even, because in this, even my people, especially in northern Gaza, they don't even have the luxury of having a flag to be wrapped around their bodies. They don't even have shrouds in Gaza. If you look at the photos of the recent massacres, you see people wrapped and shrouded in their blankets that are much needed for winter right now. But this is our situation. That's why it's important to document, because when you write a poem today, people are going to read it a few years later and see, oh, that reality is different from now, even though it was very, very bad. And this is what my poetry book tells me when I go back and read it. That's why when Audre Lorde said, poetry is not a luxury, it's not only that writing poetry is not a luxury, but even reading it is not a luxury. Because you realize how shocking, how genocidal this world has become. Okay. We'll do it now. Yamma mwil al-hawa. Can I get my phone? Sorry. Sorry. يما مويل الهوى يما مويلية ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم الناذل فيا يما مويل الهوى يما مويلية ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم الناذل فيا ومشيت تحت الشتاء والشتاء رواني والصيف لما أتى ولع من نيراني بيضل عمر الفتاني در للحرية يما مويل الهوى يما مويلية ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم الناذل فيا يا ليل صح الندى يشهد على جراحي وانسى الجيش العيدة من كل النواحي والليل شاف الرادة عم يتعلم بيا. Thank you. A litany for one land. after Audre Lorde. For those living on the other side, we can see you. We can see the rain when it pours on our fields, on our valleys, and when it slides down the roofs of your modern houses built atop our homes. Can you take off your sunglasses and look at us here? See how the rain has flooded our streets, how the children's umbrellas have been pierced by a prickly downpour on their way to school. The trees you see have been watered with our tears. They bear no fruit. The red roses take their color from our blood. They smell of death. The river that separates us from you is just a mirage you created when you expelled us. It is one land. For those who are standing on the other side, shooting at us, spitting on us, how long can you stand there, fenced by hate? Are you going to keep your black glasses on until you are unable to put them down? Soon, we won't be here for you to watch. It won't matter if you blink your eyes or not, if you can stand or not. You won't cross that river to take more land, because you will vanish into your mirage. You can't build a new colony on our graves. And when we die, our bones will continue to grow, to reach and intertwine with the roots of the olive and orange trees, to bathe in the sweet Yafa Sea. One day, we will be born again when you are not there, because this land knows us. She is our mother. When we die, we are just resting in her womb until the darkness is cleared. For those who are not here anymore, we have been here forever, but you never cared to listen. Okay, I will save the... There is a poem in the second book called Gaza Notebooks, 2021-2023. Just gonna read two parts. At 5th grade, I visit the school library. On a wall by the door, a poster claims, if you read books, you live more than one life. Now I'm 30, so I'm now 32. This poem is 2 years old. Now I'm 30, and whenever I look at faces around me, old or young, on each forehead I read, if you live in Gaza, you die several times. Stones of house after the explosion get amnesia. Some forget they were in a wall, in a bedroom, or a kitchen, or a bathroom, some in a ceiling. Some forget they sat behind photo frames for years. A few stones forget they were stones, those hit by the bomb. My dreams as a child. I still have dreams about a room filled with toys my mother always promised we could have if we were rich. I still have dreams about seeing the refugee camp from a window on a plane. I still have dreams about seeing the animals I learned about in 3rd grade, elephant, giraffe, kangaroo, and wolf. I still have dreams about running for miles and miles, with no border blocking my feet, with no unexploded bombs scaring me off. I still have dreams about watching my favorite team playing soccer on the beach, me waiting for the ball to come my way and run away with it. I dream still about my grandfather, how much I want to pick oranges with him in Yafa. But my grandfather died. Yafa is occupied, and oranges no longer grow in his weeping groves. I told you about the poem for a moment. For a moment. Her small body rides in my arms as I run to the hospital. There is no electricity, and the inner hallways are a forest lined with cots. The girl I carry is dead. I know that. The pressure of the explosion tore apart her thin veins. I know she is dead, but everyone who sees us runs after us. You are alive for a moment when living people run after you. The moon, and there is a story here about watching a video of a young man whose body was left in the street to be eaten up by cats. Even the cats were starving in Gaza. And you saw some videos I posted if you are following me or other people. Bodies which were left in the street being eaten up by dogs and cats and maybe mice, I don't know. You said that the mice and cats were saying free Palestine. But in Gaza they were made to eat the bodies of my fellow people. And there is also the photo of a daughter and her father whose bodies again were left in the street, and you could see in the photo they were carrying their backpacks. Even the father, who is 50 years old, is carrying a backpack as if he's going to school. But in that backpack is his home. Some clothes, a bottle of water, some clothes for his daughter, some lollipops, his ID cards. So I wrote this poem about these two scenes, and I called it The Moon. She is lying on the asphalt, her small belly, her chest, her forehead, her hands, her cold feet bare in the night. A hungry cat paces. Shrapnel rings as it hits neighboring houses already bombed. The hungry cat sees the girl, her wounds still warm. Hungrier, the girl's father lies next to her on his back. The backpack he wears still has the girl's favorite candy and a small toy. The girl was waiting till they arrived to eat her lollipop. The cat gets close to try the flesh. A bomb pounds the street. No flesh, no girl, no father, no cat. Nobody is hungry. The moon overhead is not the moon. Okay. This is a poem that is published by Mizna. Before I sleep. Before I sleep, death is always sitting on my windowsill, whether in Gaza or in Cairo. Even when I lived in a tent, it never failed to create a window for itself. It looks me in the eye and recounts to me the many times it let me live. When I respond, "But you took my loved ones away," it swallows the light in the tent and hides in the dark to visit the next day. This poem is called Right or Left, and in the panel discussion I mentioned the stories of 3 friends, and this poem is about one of them whose body remains under the rubble since last November. My friend Ismail Abu Ghaban is a fellow Arabic. I taught English at honor schools. He taught Arabic in honor schools, and he was an avid reader of Arabic literature and world literature. He left Gaza. He left North Gaza for South Gaza, just as Israel directed everyone. He left his house with his 2 kids, Rimi and Osama, and his wife, and also his parents, and 5 sisters. In November, just a few days after I was released, just a few days after that, I was in the hospital, and my friend told me, "Look, let's go and visit Ismail's sisters. They are in the hospital." I said, "What happened?" He said, "Ismail was killed with his children, with his parents and 3 sisters. Only the 2 sisters survived. And the body of Ismail, his sister Ikram, about whom the poem was written, and the father, their bodies still remain under the rubble. Right or left? Under the rubble, her body has remained for days and days. When the war ends, we try to remove the rubble, stone after stone. We only find one small bone. It is a bone from her arm. Right or left? It does not matter as long as we cannot find the henna from her neighbor's wedding on her skin, or the ink from a school pen on a little index finger. there is one poem that is outdated, and I hope that no one from Gaza will read it and follow the instructions in it, because it's outdated. I wrote this poem back in May 2021 when Israel attacked Gaza for 11 days, killing so many people. What a Gazan should do during an Israeli airstrike: turn off the lights in every room, sit in the inner hallway of the house, away from the windows, stay away from the stove, stop thinking about making black tea, have a bottle of water nearby big enough to cool down children's fear, get a child's kindergarten backpack and stuff tiny toys and whatever amount of money there is, and the ID cards and photos of late grandparents, aunts or uncles, and the grandparents' wedding invitation that's been kept for a long time. And if you are a farmer, you should put some strawberry seeds in one pocket and some soil from the balcony flower pot in the other, and hold on tight to whatever number there was on the cake from the last birthday. Okay, I will read one poem, and then another poem, and then another poem from the... That was a joke, okay. It's just provoking. Get down, you know. My library. This is an old poem, so. My library. Because this is based on a real story. I was in my house. I had all of Edward Said's books on the shelves, etc. And there was an airstrike that's just a few hundred. That was maybe 2020. So no, I was in America. I think it was 2018, and there was an airstrike just a few hundred meters away from us, and some books fell off the shelves. And this is a poem about that. My library. My books remain on the shelves as I left them last year, but all the words have died. I search for my favorite book out of a place. I find it lying lonely in a drawer next to the photo album and my old Nokia phone. The pen inside the book is still intact, but some ink drops have leaked. Some words breathe its ink. The pen like a ventilator for a dozen patients. Home, Jerusalem, the sea, Haifa, the rock, the oranges, the sand, the pigeon, Cairo, my mother, Beirut, books, the rock, the sea, the sea. I will end with one poem, and before I read one from my first book. So this poem is very important to me. It's called Under the Rubble, and if you don't, I hope that you can get the book. If you can't get the book, it's published by The New Yorker, and it's also in my voice. So it's very important because I wrote it after October 7th, and every poem is a story. So this is a collection of stories in the poem. Under the Rubble. She slept on her bed, never woke up again. It could be Hiba Abu Nada, by the way, the poet about whom we were talking. She slept on her bed, never woke up again. Her bed has become her grave, a tomb beneath the ceiling of her room. The ceiling a cenotaph. No name, no year of birth, no year of death, no epitaph. Only blood and a smashed picture frame and ruin next to her. In Jabalia camp, a mother collects her daughter's flesh in a piggy bank, hoping to buy her a plot on a river in a faraway land. A group of mute today is the anniversary of the killing of my wife's uncle. I told you about an uncle, but this is another uncle. That was last year, exactly today, last year. He was born deaf and mute. And he was abducted from inside a school that I attended for my 4th grade. He was abducted from inside the school, and then he was taken to the Kamal Adwan hospital when Israel turned it into an interrogation center. So they turned a hospital into an interrogation center. So he was abducted from the school, he was led to that hospital, and he was deaf and mute, and he was a father of 2 children. And because they took off their clothes, when he was released, the same day he was released, the doctors in the hospital gave him a doctor uniform. And then when he arrived at the gate to the school, he was shot by a sniper. And there was a photo, I posted it today because it's the anniversary. I posted the photo of Nassim because he was in a doctor's uniform. I mean, I said, it's impossible. Nassim is not a doctor, he's not a nurse. He's a teacher, he used to teach deaf students with special needs. I mean, but these were the only clothes that were available at the hospital at the time. A group of mute people were talking, sign. When a bomb fell, they fell silent. It rained again last night. The new plant looked for an umbrella in the garage. The bombing got intense, and our house looked for a shelter in the neighborhood. I leave the door to my room open so the words in my books, the titles and names of authors and publishers could flee when they hear the bombs. I became homeless once, but the rubble of my city covered the streets. They could not find, this is based on a real thing that I saw. They could not find a stretcher to carry your body. They put you on a wooden door they found under the rubble. Your neighbors, a moving wall. The scars on our children's faces will look for you. Our children's amputated legs will run after you. And this part is very special because I wrote it in January. And just last month, I witnessed something very similar to what happened. 2 fathers were killed in front of a school shelter in a Shati camp where I was born in Gaza City. And around their bodies were loaves of bread that they were getting for their children. He left the house to buy some bread for his kids. News of his death made it home, but not the bread. No bread. Death sits to eat whoever remains of the kids. No need for a table. No need for bread. A father wakes up at night, sees the random colors on the walls drawn by his 4-year-old daughter. The colors are about 4 feet high. Next year, they would be 5. But the painter has died in an airstrike. There are no colors anymore. There are no walls. I changed the order of my books on the shelves. This is real. I changed the order of my books on the shelves. 2 days later, the war broke out. Beware of changing the order of your books. What are you thinking? What thinking? What you? You? Is there still you? You there? And this is a question that I still ask. Where should people go? Should they build a big ladder and go up? But heaven has been blocked by the drones and F-16s and the smoke of death. My son asks me whether, when we return to Gaza, I could get him a puppy. I say, I promise, if we can find any. I ask my son if he wishes to become a pilot when he grows up. He says he won't wish to drop bombs on people and houses. When we die, our souls leave our bodies, take with them everything they loved in our bedrooms, the perfume bottles, the makeup, the necklaces, and the pens. In Gaza, our bodies and rooms are crushed. Nothing remains for the soul. Even the souls, they get crushed under the rubble for weeks. Okay, last one from the old book. You will sing with me if you can. موطني موطني الجلال والجمال والسناء والهناء وفي رباك في رباك الحياة والنجاة والهناء والرجاء في هواك في هواك هل أراك سالما منعما وغانما مكرما سالما منعما وغانما مكرما هل أراك في علاك تبلغ السمك موطني 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 الشباب لن يكل همه أن يستقل أو يبيد نستقي من الردى ولن نكون للعدا كالعبيد لا نريد ذلنا المؤبدا وعيشنا المنكدا ذلنا المؤبدا وعيشنا المنكدا لا نريد بل نعيد مجدنا التاليد موطني Forever homeless. That's the last poem I will read. Forever homeless. Before my long travel, I pack my suitcases, stuff them with some sand from our land, some scent from my mother's kitchen, and sounds of birds in the morning. And in my pockets, I put the 4 directions. My hands are the compass. At the airport, I beg the officer not to open the suitcases and, if needed, to touch my clothes gently. Otherwise, I would be standing on nothing, will be surrounded by nothing. I will see nothing. I would be weightless and forever homeless. Thank you. Shukran. This is in honor of Rifat al-Ar'ir and our fellow poets, scholars, university professors, doctors, nurses, abductees, our children who are living in tents without any clothes. Rifat, by the way, I didn't mention that his daughter, Rifat wrote this poem, If I Must Die, in 2011. And he republished it a few days before he was killed. And he wrote it to his daughter Shayma, and you will read in the introduction. And his daughter Shayma was killed in April, just 5 months after his assassination. She was killed with her husband, Muhammad Siyam, and their child, who was the first grandchild of Rifat, a grandchild who was born after the grandfather was killed. So, in the spirit of Rifat, in honor of everyone, I hope that you will support this book. I hope that you will read the poem, tell the story of Rifat, because in the poem, if I must die, you must live. The I was killed, Rifat, and you, his daughter, was killed. But let every one of us be the you in the poem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Let's put our hands together for this incredible lineup. Mosab, Tim, Lena, Danez, Sagirah, Sarah, Aziza, Dina, Nick, an incredible evening. I feel so nourished and activated, and thank you. Special thanks to Sarah Yassin, who's been putting together these incredible events all around the country. I also want to acknowledge those who've been working behind the scenes to make things so smooth tonight. Jordan Lee Thompson and Lorenza Serna, who've been documenting by video and live streaming, and Ryan Stepara doing photography. Thank you to the Parkway staff who've been so wonderful. Yes, give them a round of applause. Yeah. You know, it's very clarifying at this time which venues will take an event like this. So just thank you to Birchbark Books, who are incredible native booksellers. Many of the readers tonight have books, and Birchbark has them for sale in the lobby. They worked so hard to get Lena Tuffaha's book because she just won the National Book Award for Poetry, and her book is really hard to find. So you're very lucky tonight. And to my colleagues, Nuruddin Hussein and Alina Kevorkian, who are also manning the Mizna table, personing the Mizna table. So thank you all. Be well, and free Palestine.